Hi, everybody. My name's John. I'm an alcoholic. And, I was thinking I'm grateful to be waking up on a Saturday morning, a nice day, and to, not be hungover and have a headache. And, I always think of that when I come out to speak at this meeting. I usually get out here like once a year, I think, and get an opportunity to speak. I remember when it was on the Lincoln Street many years ago, and so it has a long history with me, and so does resentment. So I like, can always identify with, if you want a good AA meeting, start talking about anger and resentment. You're always going to get something very colorful, So it's, and as it says in this reading, it states that it's the number one offender. And for me, like when I finally hit my bottom and, got into Big Book Step Study, was introduced to it. Actually, I was thinking about that. I got a resentment and left. Number one offender. Prevented me from getting well sooner than, a lot sooner than I could have. So, so anytime, I've seen that a lot over the years. People come in and they're new to Big Book Step Study, or they've been in AA for a long time, sober for a long time, and they get a resentment and they don't like the meeting and they leave. And I can understand that. So whenever that happens, I try to try to make an effort to point that out. A little bit. Just, to maybe plant the seed to maybe get them back here. Because I ended up back here. And, the reason was I had a brother in Big Book Step Study. And, I had that resentment. I left. I heard something I didn't like. And but I watched him. And I watched him change, and I watched him start making amends and start, putting his life back together. And he made a huge financial amends that kind of blew my mind because it was a lot of money. And I was like, wow, I owe a lot of money, So, maybe this can help me. But I think just more his attitude and the change that I saw was more attractive to me. So anyways, that's what happened to me with Big Book Step Study. I think it was probably around, 2-3 years sober when I got into this, and started to, got a sponsor and started to, start this list. But the thing that I could really identify was with being angry and resentful, and that being a number one offender for me prior to getting sober, because a lot of times, I would get pissed off and get resentful, and something wouldn't go my way. I'd have problems in my relationships, a problem at work, problems fixing something. I tried to fix things along, a lot because, things broke and had old stuff. And so, anything from, breaking, fighting with a rusted bolt, made the list. I'm like, rusted bolts made my list, I was just like, Jesus Christ. I left no stone unturned. I'm like, because I remember I was trying to get sober, and I was going to meetings, and I had to work on my truck, and my wife pissed me off, and I had to go work on the van, and I couldn't get the fucking bolt off, and I threw the wrench, and I'm like, fuck this, I need a drink, and that's how it went, and it's so I could identify with resentment being a number one offender. So I was sold. I looked at my past, and I was sold on that being the issue, and this process and my relationship with God after doing the third step and getting the instructions to invite God into writing the list was definitely a small spiritual experience in itself, because I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to remember everybody's names. Like, you want me to go back to as far as I can remember, junior high? I just met this guy 5 minutes ago, and I can't remember his name, so this isn't going to work, And forget it. I don't want to do it. I got a resentment. But so I, was instructed to do that third step prayer, to get on my knees, and I did. I said, God, please help me with this, and help me with the names, because I can't come up with any really, and but lo and behold, I sat down for an hour and I had 180 names, and I wasn't done, because my instructions were to sit for an hour and no names come, then I could stop, and I was done. So that went on for about 600 names, and and it's clear that anybody I came into contact with pissed me off in one form or another. They didn't even have to say anything to me. So my mind is I was telling them, it's a resentment machine. So. So that experience was like, wow, this third step really works. Relying on God and doing that is, it's a phenomenon. It's unexplainable. You'll only identify with it if you've done it. And if you haven't done it, it's definitely worth the experience in itself. But and then it says, the beginning of this resentment says, that we work at this vigorously, and then that pissed me off, because, it took me 5 years to write, so, with 600 resentments, so every time I turn around, I got a resentment, but, they talk about, the examples I give in here are good key examples, the boss, the wife interested in the boss, the guy being afraid of losing his house, it's just, it's a good one, because, those were key core resentments for me, especially around the relationship department. With my wife, I would, get pissed off if anybody gave her attention, or, she was one of those touchy-feely ones, had to touch all the guys, to identify, just friendly, supposedly, or she just basically knew how to piss me off and make me jealous. It's one or the other. And they're never going to tell you the truth, so. But, maybe it was the truth. I don't know, who knows? They're still not telling me. So, I just, it's just, I was selfish. I didn't want anybody giving her attention. I just wanted it to be, a statue. That would have been nice. Yes. Not have any emotions or feelings or, the ability to communicate with anybody. So, that's my selfishness. Dishonesty is, maybe the lies that went through my head were not true. Maybe she wasn't going to go with the guy, maybe she wasn't going to cheat on me, Maybe I was the one to worry about. So the dishonesty is very troublesome. Sometimes hard to pick out. I had to ask God to help show me the dishonesty. Self-seeking behaviors, that was pretty clear to see. Usually, when I was drinking, I would pick up a drink, or I'd start a fight, and it would be a good excuse to drink. It just, it was ugly, and became angry, depressed, self-pitying, how could you do that to me? She's a jerk, or whatever. And these are kind of like, they didn't really come out till I, prayed about it. This is kind of like, a lot of this stuff is subconscious. And, I didn't really realize it, so, selfish, self-seeking. My sponsor instructed me to pray on, the truth in the situation, which was helpful. I got some truths, and some things were revealed about me, not about the other person, And then, I had fear of losing my wife, my girlfriend, whatever the case might have been. Fear of not getting what I wanted, and fear of people's opinions, especially, if they're around and my wife's, getting attention from somebody else, and she's, touching them and, giggling and all this stuff, and she's doing this in front of my friends, and yeah, I'm afraid. It's causing problems because I'm afraid. And then inevitably I ruined the relationship, and as it says in here, it was basically my own doing. So it was a huge huge eye opener, and that's just in the relationship department. I had a lot of different resentments, and some people have a hard time coming up with them, and I had everything from junior high school, coaches, bosses, friends, played sports, so I had fellow teammates and stuff like that, if they were better than me or more physical, or maybe they had a better lifestyle than me. They weren't, drinking and partying like I was. So there was a lot of different resentments that, materialized out of doing this list. And then, I just shift on over to principals and institutions. That was, that was pretty cool too. To see, how my mind thought about different institutions, and I had a pretty good list on that, and anywhere from doctors, lawyers, mechanics, stuff like that, local police department. I can't leave them out. The whole, there's a few cops on my list too, and so they got on the list. Local judge, court. So there's, it was pretty thorough. Everybody made the list. My mother's cats, she had that. She was touching them a lot, Fed them better than she fed me, They got more attention, It's just the mind of an alcoholic. Good thing the dogs passed away long before them, but I don't know. It's just, I think this was, it was a tough write, It took a long time for me, But thank God I made it through this part of the writing. I think once I, if you're in it, just keep doing it. If I stopped, my life got colorful, so I got pushed along the way. So it was, it was definitely well worth all the effort that I put into it, and. Couple big ones. I had a big resentment. Like it talks about, praying for people that, harm us, and, maybe we didn't have anything to do with it. And, I had one on there, the guy that murdered my father was on there. And, so I, had to put that down. And, at this point, I think it had been a long time, but there's still some damage in there, and the writing was able, I was able to at least come to terms and see, that to have some kind of understanding like that people can do that, because I think when it happened, I was young, and I was like, how can anybody do that? How can anybody murder somebody and kill somebody? So I was like, I have to look at my inventory. I was a pretty angry guy, and there's a good argument that I was that way because of that. But maybe he had his own things that really created that. And I had to honestly say, when I looked at my resentments, there was times when I wanted to. People had hurt me or did things to me that really made me angry, and struggled with those thought processes. I never did it, but I thought about it. So it allowed me to have at least a little bit of understanding. That's it. and to try to, have some forgiveness. But it was tough, because I saw what it did to my family, So, so that was, one that, I was able to come to a little bit of understanding with and forgive, so. But anyways, it's definitely well worth doing it. If you're writing, keep writing. And if you're checking it out and you got a resentment on this meeting, it's okay. This disease doesn't want you to get better, so you can go, but you're welcome back. And everybody welcome me back. And I'm glad I came back, and that's all I got. Thank you.